Intimidation, right? Level 5. Everybody has this, ooh, level 5 fear. And it can't be like that. SIS is just a progression. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think we need to get off of this being stuck on level 1. Okay, oh no, now it's a break. Level 2 is all different. It's not. It's not. We have to remember that our procedures, our structure, our multi-sensory methods carry through from 1 through 5. And it's a constant move ahead and folding back in. Going ahead and folding back in. And what you'll find in level 5, there's much more of that. Because it's so complex. I must say that level 5, you will definitely need a lot of other resources. You cannot just go page by page of the manual. Because Sandra Dillon does not supply a lot. So, you know, when you start out in level 1, it's so easy. She tells you every word to say. Everything is there. And then gradually and gradually, it drops off and it drops off as far as your extra support. And you're supported with supervision through level 3. Then you're out on your own, 4 and 5. So one thing, never be afraid to contact any of our supervisory staff. If you're out there on your own and you're stuck, we will be happy to guide you through. Okay, so just remember that. Let me talk about just essential considerations as you're progressing through level 5. A lot of it is the age and grade of your students is going to determine how fast you can move, what exactly you can teach, the severity of their learning disability. If they're not so severe, it's often by the time you get into level 5, they're reading well and they know a lot of this stuff already. That also depends on the school they're attending. I have happened to be fortunate enough to work with kids at Mater Dei where they teach a very intensive phonics course in the 1st, 2nd, and a little bit into the 3rd grades. But public school and a lot of other schools, they don't teach the phonics. So a lot of that plays into it. Also, how accurate all the previous material has been covered is really going to affect how level 5 goes. It's essential to incorporate grammar and writing, as well as morphology, and you're going to be introducing some study skills, especially if your students are approaching or in middle school. A lot of times in level 5, you're going to start to, or you should start to have the blending of the SIS material with their actual schoolwork. Direct application of what they've learned to what they're doing at school. And that's best done through maybe English, or even you can do some work with whatever is most difficult for the student. So if their history is hard for them, use parts of that for their reading and other activities within that level. Lesson planning. This can vary, but always stay with your structure. We have a structure in SIS, and that's part of the beauty of it, is staying with the structure. It might vary. Like, you might do a little bit different order. Maybe you'll start out with your grammar practice and then move into an actual SIS visual auditory review, and then maybe a new introduction. So you determine your structure according to what's going on with this student at that time. But we still must keep our structure of our visual reviews, our auditory reviews, and moving through the steps as Sandra has it in the level. But then you use your verbal expression time to do your morphology or your grammar, your writing. For some students, I have put morphology and maybe before a new introduction, or if we're not doing anything new. But once we start the morphology, I keep the review of that every day too, because it's really teaching those roots and prefixes and suffixes. You have to keep that flow going of that constant review. Just briefly about my personal experience. I've had many students. In fact, right now I have 3 students in level 5. 2 are in 5th grade, 1 is in 4th grade. And they have been anywhere from, say, 225 lessons to 325 lessons.
In level 5?
To get there. No, not in level 5. And, you know, they're all doing great. We're moving really slow. You might do one thing and stay with that for a week as you're continually folding back the stuff that still needs to be practiced. Usually it's spelling rules. My students that are in level 5, they're reading very fluently, I would say, at this point. And you'll get to digraph PH and they know it. But it's hard to get through those words. So the last point as far as introduction is sometimes your student is doing really well and you're running out of time that you're going to be able to work with them. Either they're going to high school, they don't have time for academic therapy. So what you might have to do is pick and choose through level 5 what's really critical. Or if the parents are saying, we're done with this, he's tired of it, you'll find a lot of that at the level 5. And a lot of kids, they drop before that level. So if I'm aware that they are going to stop, I really try to pick out, and I've listed it on, you'll see buried in your packet. Don't sort now, but there are certain things that you should try to work through. The TION, SION, they often can read those. I think AGE at the end of a word is very important. The vowel team phonograms, at least so they're familiar with them, the ones that are presented in level 5. And the spelling rules, really important to spend time on the spelling rules that are presented in level 5. And outside of that, then the consonant digraphs, PH and CH, just for their knowledge, so they're aware of it. Most kids are aware of it, and by that point they often can read a lot of those words. They know the common ones. And that's it. That's just a brief overview of just trying to calm you down, not be afraid, take it slow, and use your skills that you've built through, and just keep cycling things back. But this is your guidance, your structure. When you make your lesson plans, stay with that structure. Okay, next. Did I do it? Did I stay in my time frame? Yay!
The only way to get up is to the right of the people right there.
It's a maze.
Thank you, that was great.
All right, give me a second to set up here. So from your agenda, you can see I'm going to be covering in a very brief period of time TION through VCCC. So as I was preparing for this presentation today, I came across some old notes way back when I first started under Dr. Betty Levinson and Claire. And, many of our students at this point coming into level 5 are adolescents. And I found something that Betty had shared with us that I thought, this is just so true. We have to remember that there's a difference between the physical growth of the adolescent and the psychological growth. And so many of us face this psychological situation when we're instructing them. And notice that Joy's second point in approaching level 2 is know your student. Well, when you're working with adolescents, Betty Levinson said, making the way through adolescence is like going through a minefield. And isn't that so true? From day to day, from minute to minute, you really just don't know what you're facing. But to know your student helps. So that is an important point. Okay, so you are going to need to pull out your manuals because this is instruction time. If you didn't bring it, see if you can share with someone or look over someone's shoulder. I will be referencing this packet that is clipped together, and the first page is Final Stable Syllable TION. So see if you can find that, and I will be referencing that. So as I approach myself, as I approach TION, I know that my student has already seen this in level 3, TION, right? Final Stable Syllable. And I know that I've instructed it, but I'm not going to be foolish enough to think that I don't know what, I know the total instruction on it. So I will follow my manual very closely. That is my right hand. As Joy has said, just keep to what we've been taught. So I review with the student the definition of the final stable syllable. We all know that it's always in the final position of a word. It's the final syllable. It always stays together, so it's stable. And when we approach this, we've already taught them that we know that consonant LE is one type of final stable syllable, but that TION brought in another one. That's the beginning of the shuns. Other shuns are the CIAL, the CIAN, the CIOUS, TIAL, TIOUS, CIENT, and TIENT. Those are all of our other shuns. So I've been told by my manual that I don't have to do reintroduction, or I don't have to do a linkage with this, a full linkage, but I will go through structured steps nonetheless, and I will just follow my guidelines here. So if you look at your blue manual, you will continue to do the half bracket around the final stable syllable. So you refer back to your coding order. This is the workbook, and it's right there at the beginning of level 5. You look for suffixes, and then your next step is bracket your final stable syllable, which is your TION in this case. This syllable is always unaccented, and the accent's going to fall on the syllable just before that TION. And the blue manual gives you examples like action and contraction. There's your 3 syllable. You notice that that accent is on the syllable right before it. So you would just follow your coding order when you approach these words and place the accent appropriately. Now look at your special situations. This is where you have to gain your knowledge yourself as the academic therapist. If the letters A, O, or U end the preceding syllable, they're always sounded as the name of the letter, so you're going to get the long sound. So the examples there are station, motion, contribution. Do you see that open vowel long sound right before? Okay, and your accent is there. And then the second special situation, E, is very rarely found in that position, and the misbehaving Y. And it always represents our short sound, okay? So the example there is ignition. Okay. Morphology is important at this point, and notice that it is a Latin-based suffix. So I do go ahead and teach my students that it does have meaning, the act of or the state of. And out of all of the final stable syllables, I will teach this one meaning. This is important. This is one of the most common endings that these adolescents will get. They will get this way back in, they're getting it in 2nd and 3rd grade. So it's very important that they know meaning of this. And this is going to be used in spelling as final stable syllable, T-I-O-N. So you are going to go through your discovery, and the words are given to you. The student listens to that final sound and should be saying that the sound is shun and that is spelled T-I-O-N, and they know the final stable syllable by this point. And then for the linkages, there's no keyword. You can use linkage paper, but since there was no linkage with this one, I don't use it typically. And then you have bracket. So you can give spelling words with this shun, and it's going to be said as the student names final stable syllable shun, S-I-O-N, when they're spelling.
T-I-O.
Excuse me, T-I-O-N,
Yeah.
sorry, thank you.
I'm not seeing that in the manual for T-I-O-N.
You're on page 290. So this has already been placed in.
335 with the new manual. Or 337 would be okay.
I'm sorry?
We have different page numbers depending upon the version of the
Oh.
manual.
Okay, so those that have the other, please tell them what page they're on. This is 290 in the latest manual.
I'm on 335.
335.
But I don't see any of those.
Oh, you know what, I'm sorry, I was in level 3 looking at that.
Yeah, then as we would go back.
So now, the latest page would be,
Rations is in the workbook. and it's
yes, 335, is that what you said, Deb?
Yeah, that's it.
335, so sorry about that. Okay. So spelling of that, and you give, use your spelling procedures as we always do. And then I have given you in supplement, if you look at your handouts, I've given you 2 supplements. The first one is that you would cut the bottom letters out, words out, and you would place them out on the desk. And then you, the academic therapist, would read the clue to discovery of the word. So I'm always in my planning and my teaching thinking, how can I bring vocabulary and understanding of higher level words into this? So I would just read this little description of what the word might mean, and then the student will go through and read each word that's been set out first, and then they will pick the word that connects to that meaning. I always give ones that I think the student would know readily, instead of giving them a stumper at first. I think that does help them. And then the second handout that I have for you is a 4-page one. It starts with TION, words activity, word group 1, 2, 3. So you would cut out, you can copy these and put it on cardstock. You cut out all of these little syllables. And you see that TION is highlighted, bolder. And then you just work in groups of 3 for putting words together. We used this in the summer program for the middle schoolers, and they worked in teams of 2. So it really worked nicely if you have more than one student working at the same time. And you only give them, so look at word group 1, you only give them the syllables that are going to be required for those words that are the answers. And you put, so you're going to be putting out, here's the answer sheet. for the instructor. You will put out Com, Mo, Paul, Lou, Star, and they with a shun, the 3 shuns, and then they read what the definition is or the clue to it, and then they put the word together. Okay? So it's kind of a manipulative, hands-on. It's building vocabulary. It's making them do some critical thinking. Okay? So those are the 2 handouts on TION. Okay, moving on to final stable syllable, SION. So you can turn to page 336 and follow along. So SION will not have a keyword, and we use the linkage paper only to do the first 6 linkages on this one. It's a half bracket as well, and it is irregular for spelling, as TION is the regular choice when they hear shun. However, there's more SION words than there are TION, but the TION is the more regular for spelling. So this is going to be found when you hear the S sound. You're going to be spelling, in that syllable before, you're going to be spelling it SION. So you give them the discovery words, and the examples are in the manual: mission, confession, compulsion, etc. You read that to them and you ask them what is the sound that they're hearing in that final stable situation, and they're saying shun, and you say, well, we already know that it's TION. Do you know of any other final stable syllable in that position at the end of the word that might say shun? Hopefully they would have the knowledge to say SION. If not, you would lead them to that discovery that you have SION. So when I do the linkage paper, I would have SION, and I would say, follow the same linkage procedure, and I would say final stable syllable SION, shun. Final stable syllable SION, shun. Final stable syllable S. So follow the same thing. And you go all the way through your closing of the eyes, the blind writing. Okay? That's your 6 linkages on that. Now, in the reading of these, the TION had quite a number of pages to read. I should mention that. So it was pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. 6 and 7. Okay, so the question might be, do I slow down at TION so that they read all of these pages? The answer is yes. Make it so you're taking it nice and easy. They may have the knowledge of that final stable syllable TION, but yet these words are getting more and more difficult. And these sentences are a little trickier. So just take your time. You're going to be having review days of that. And then you can fold in some vocabulary, some of this type of additional type of exercises that I gave you that you can create matching. You know, and that's another thing that I learned as in my training. Of course, we used to have the summer practicum, but in my training and as I went along, with each student, they all needed something a little bit different. So you have to put your creative hat on, and you have to think of ways to reach your student. If their difficulty is in fluency, you want to be able to not give them so many words but to read every day, but you want to build that fluency. You've got to figure out how to do that. Is it in individual word cards? Is it phrases? Is it the sentences? Sometimes the student, this is overwhelming for them. Break that down. put it on a separate piece of paper and only do half of those. You know, if that's what the student you're meeting in there. Okay, so you're back to your SION. You have page 8 and page 9 in here. And that's it. So you don't get much offering as far as reading. There's somewhere in all of this, maybe at the beginning of level 5, where Dylan says for supplemental reading, oh, here it is, on page 333, you can use alphabetic phonics, the situation learning 3, and I go there quite a bit to get extra words. Angling for words, Wilson Readers, J&J. When you need to supplement, you will know. You will know that your student needs more reading practice. You just get that instinctive feeling by this time of instruction. So reach out to those areas and start creating different avenues for additional reading support. Okay, so for this supplement, if you could look at your handouts, one is an SION word study. Now, this one is a little bit different because at this point, I'm thinking my student needs some test-taking skills as well as vocabulary. So if you look at the instruction on the lead-in to this SION word study, the student is to read these words and then fill in the blank which word fits best. But I've also included, and this is where you all need to be really intuitive and think, how else can I pull in something that this student needs into my daily instruction? Well, I'm bringing the test-taking skills in. First, read the directions, numbering the order. You can read these, along. I don't want to take the time to read them, but have the student circle what's first, second, third, last, and go by it methodically, and have them do this little worksheet like it's a test. As they go through it, they use one word, have them cross it off, that kind of thing. So you're doing kind of multitasking while you do that. And the second handout I've given you for SION is that if you notice on these words, you're going to have a base word that the student needs to understand where these come from. They should have a good understanding of what a base word is. If not, you need to review that with them. But to be able to pull it apart and say, the word is permission. What is the base word? Permit. So many of these you can go through and ask them as they're reading these words, what is the base word? And that's what this next handout is for you. Because when you divide nouns and verbs, when it comes to SION, some of them with SION, those become the noun and the base word is the verb. So this needs to be pointed out to the student through instruction or discovery. And then this is for sorting. Now, do I do this all in one day and just call it a day? No. This is like an ongoing, maybe 2-3 days, so that they understand, get the concept of it, and that they can keep it in longer-term memory. So that is another suggestion for you to expand on word study. So these are going to be together when I go through my group of final stable syllables. So I have all my consonant LEs, these will follow right behind, and the student's going to be saying TION, the active or the state of. TION, shun, the active or the state of. And then SION, shun. Okay, it's right behind it. And this is added to the language notebook on the final stable syllable shun page in the spelling sounds section. So you're keeping up with your language notebooks, right? Yes, everybody's nodding their heads. Yes, yes. All right, so quickly on to final stable syllables, S-I-O-N says jeune. Merida. Oh, thank you. Okay, S-I-O-N says jeune. So we're on 337 in the blue manual. We're going to go through our discovery. You give them your discovery words and ask the student what the difference in the sound is. And they should be hearing the harder sound, the jeune. And you instruct that it's the final stable syllable, and you show them the same card, and now we have two sounds, shun and jeune. Okay, so there is no keyword. I'm going to use the linkage paper through the 6 linkages, and this time the only difference is that the sound is jeune. Okay, the coding is the same with the half bracket. You're following the coding steps. Tracking may be included, but it's not necessary. I personally have never done tracking with this, and I did come up with one. If anybody wants to see it later on, we can do it, but the only way I could come up with one was to switch out syllables. It would have to be. So if you want to practice one with me later or have me show it to you, I'm happy to do so. We won't take the time now. We are going to be practicing S-I-O-N words because they follow a long vowel. That's what's making this jeune. You're going to be instructing that. It's all in your manual. Or after an R sound. Okay, so you're going to put this in the language notebook as well under a spelling section for jeune. And then it just stays right behind as the second sound with your final stable syllable. So the handout on this one is, at this point, practice your reading for jeune, pages 10